Some they call it functional alcoholism, but if you know anything about Ben, he's got vision with precision, microphones and a tinkle of derision. You're about to hear what beer can be. It's time for Barley and Me.
Welcome to Barley and Me. I'm your host, Ben Rice. We're here today in Littleton, Colorado. Never been here before. This is my first stop. We're at Living the Dream Brewing. With me today, our guest, Jason Bell.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Jason?
I'm great.
Thank you for meeting me on a holiday in the morning. I'm very sorry.
No worries. It's good to get out of the house, so it's and it's just a lovely day today. So I actually rode my bike down today instead of driving, so it was not really what you expect to be able to do the early part of April.
Yeah, it's I've heard unseasonably warm.
Yeah, it is. But typical Colorado, a little over a week ago we had snow, so it does that. It's just wait a minute and it'll change, and
Yep. I was at Purpose Brewing yesterday morning, and I was leaving. I was walking through the parking lot. I'm like, there's just one giant pile of snow, and then everything else is like, oh yes, right. I remember this stuff. Okay, we've done it.
Absolutely. It's I moved here from the Midwest and kind of expected the winters to be worse, and they're actually, at least down here in the Front Range, I shouldn't be saying this because more people will keep moving here. But no, it's usually pretty. We get hit hard and then it goes away. So it's definitely you don't ever get bored with the weather because it just changes all the time.
Yeah. You're like, it's going to snow in like 3 days probably for no reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll get snow on Mother's Day, usually, something like that. We do a crawfish boil every year in the spring, and the first 5 years we did it, it snowed every time. It's like perfect.
Yes, exactly what you need.
Yes.
Oh, man. You should have done a snow crab boil.
That's right. We did one of those, too, later. But
and it's like,
I don't know.
It was 90 degrees.
I wouldn't have guessed it in Colorado, but people do. Now there's almost every brewery does one, and it's incredible how popular they are, and breweries are just such a part of the culture here which is why we're here. Actually, so cool. It's a lot of fun, and it's a hard time right now with COVID and dealing with all that kind of fun stuff. But the public is just itching to get back out, get back to normal, and breweries are such a huge part of that. I know there's a lot of us who have had tough times this year, and I'm hoping everyone can hold on and make it through, and because the people will be back, there's no question.
Yeah, they've kind of stuck around, which is really cool to see.
Very much so.
Because there's a lot of fear that was not going to happen.
Exactly, yeah.
People would go to their grocery stores and buy the cheapest stuff and get out of there.
I came out of the liquor retail industry in the Midwest, and I don't know, I always had a little bit of a different, I never felt like the people were going to be kind of led that way. I think they will buy what they want to buy, and Colorado has such a, you see Colorado Strong and Pride, and I've never lived anywhere that had such a high demand and want for local, and that's really cool, especially considering how many people live here, including myself, who are transplants in, but there's a reason we're all here,
right?
And that's part of it. So it's pretty cool. It's it's definitely been an interesting year. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, my usual opening question is, how's business?
Yeah.
It's a real loaded question.
It is
at this point.
It's we did a lot of things and learned a lot for sure. But what I've really been impressed with just our team has been so good at pivoting and changing, and we've always been pushing towards more distribution anyway. So it kind of just ramped that side of the business up and continues to do so. But I can't say enough about the staff and dealing with, from going to shut down to go only, a year ago, to I got an hour and a half notice that we could open up the tap room, and it was on a Saturday. Mm-hmm. And I was here starting to move stuff, and the staff walked in, and I'm like, we're opening. They're like, what? But it was socially distanced but wonderfully busy that day, and we've just kind of never looked back from it. And they've just been amazing, and dealing with all the mask restrictions and everything, and doing it the right way, and cleaning the tables, and just really caring, and then still making it an enjoyable experience when people would come. That's that's not easy. It's really not. And I say that every brewery here is going through the same thing. Has been through it, and hopefully with vaccinations are starting to see the other side. Hopefully, but it's what a learning curve for all of us. Just one change after another, and you never know. Are we a restaurant? Are we not a restaurant? Do we have to have food? Do we not have to have food? Does a food truck count? And how far apart do we have to have the tables? How many can we seat? And are the tents inside seating, outside seating? Every week it was something different, and you just kind of at some point have to stop looking at it as a burden and start looking at it as, all right, let's go. Even back in the brewing team, having to change what we brew a little bit, and transitioning more towards our canning and our packaging side, and bigger batches of those beers, and not needing as much for the tap room. And it's just like the weather; you just don't get bored for sure. It's been a lot of some sleepless nights and some very sleep heavy nights because you're so darn tired. But I'm just amazed at how these guys have reacted and how we just keep going. And it's really a tribute to the culture we've built, and both here and connection to the community and everything. So, I really can't complain. I mean, we all can, but we've done too many great things to really, man, this sucks. This is bullshit. It is what it is. Yeah. And we got to deal with it. And
you roll with it or you go under. It's just, that's how it works. It's just like a boat flipping.
Yeah. You roll with it or you get rolled. It's that simple. And these guys have just been amazing rolling with it. So
yeah, you've got plenty of life jackets and your employees and things like that.
Usually a pint at a time.
Yeah, true.
Exactly.
And then, so you said something about going into more canning. Do you already have a canning line before COVID hits?
We actually were mobile canning up until we got our canning line at the end of May of 20, which was interesting in itself. It was just something we've been working on for a couple years, and finally got the pieces to fall into place to get it done. And getting a canning line in during COVID, especially late May, when it was kind of at its rampant. Yeah. In fact, we got the equipment on Friday, and that Saturday is the day that we were told we could open. So we were trying to set that up and open the tap. Yeah, that was one of those where I slept well because I was just so darn tired. But then you also have got problems because the manufacturers couldn't travel, so that we had to learn it ourselves, which was very telling. We're pretty good, but help was wonderful when we finally got it. We learned a lot of what not to do.
Well, that's better than learning what to do, because you could screw that up.
Yeah, we did both.
It's a much better learning device than success.
Yeah, and then it took a few months to get the line really kind of where we're probably just now really getting comfortable with it. In fact, we're canning tomorrow. And that just makes a huge difference. And mobile canning is great. Especially through COVID, it was a necessary service.
Oh my goodness.
Absolutely a lifesaver. And some of those guys that stepped up and offered free canning or reduced or whatever they could do, or reduced their minimums and that kind of stuff was wonderful. But they got to make money too, so it's expensive. It is very expensive, and we were producing enough that it just didn't make sense. So we did a lot of research and landed on a canning line, and now it's the fun of tracking down cans. And I'm just about ready to order another truckload, and I'm not looking forward to it. But both from it's a lot of money outlay, but also it's 25 9-foot tall pallets of cans.
Yeah, where you put them.
Yeah, it fills this. We have a pretty good amount of square footage, but it fills it up fast.
Yeah, exactly. It's and then there's right before COVID, hey, by the way, there might be an aluminum can shortage. No big deal. By the way, now everybody needs to can everything all the time. What a wonderful confluence of items to have.
It's one of those things, though, that I think it's a little bit of which came first, the chicken or the egg. But being in Denver with so many breweries, but also here is all the suppliers have warehouses here. Ball is headquartered here for their can operations. Our chemical supplier So we have access to things pretty quick, which is nice. And if one guy doesn't have it, maybe we can go somewhere else. Cans are a little different story.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things where, and we're fortunate enough to be able to go direct to Ball to buy our cans, or Crown or whoever. But we work with Ball, and that's a little easier because there's no middleman. The first time I tried to order cans, I ordered it through a third-party company, and right in the middle of it, the whole order from Crown just got canceled.
Cool.
I was like,
Oh, all right.
how nice, and so I was scrambling like everybody else, but it's again one of those things, you roll with it or you get rolled, so we did, and it was a happy day when that truckload of cans arrived, because I didn't have to worry about it, one less thing. And
yeah,
that's probably the best mantra for us for 2020, was just trying to find one less thing to worry about, one less. That's handled. We can put that to bed. We don't have to, but funny enough, there's always another one waiting.
Oh, yeah, just popping up, just waiting down. It's like,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
So.
And sometimes it's like, I thought I already handled you. It's like, no, I'm back.
Yeah, exactly. That was with the cans. Got it ordered. Hey, it's going to be here in 6 weeks. No, it's not coming. So.
Yeah. So you're like, well, I guess we got to change how we're brewing so we can can the things that we know will move.
Well,
so we
that
maximize what cans we have left.
That's one of the hard things for us with mobile canning was, I'd have to book that 5-6 weeks in advance, and then you got to make sure that beer's ready on that day.
Yeah. It's not past its prime. It's not before its prime.
Right.
Like,
so you're hoping, and sometimes you got to push the hell out of it, and sometimes, it sits for an extra week, which ties up your, tanks are idle tanks or don't make any money. So
right.
it was, and we could only maybe do 2 beers at once, so we couldn't offer as many cans then that we can now. And we were way back, we were using shrink sleeve labels, which means we got to bring them in pre-sleeved and warehouse those, and being able to go to an adhesive label that gives us the flexibility. We started doing 16. We didn't do 16-ounce cans until we got our own line. So it opened a lot of doors for us, for sure.
Yeah.
And wholesale has been good. I mean, it's competitive, but people are buying. They're not going to stop drinking. So
that's true.
we went through I don't know if you heard
about.
It is
recession proof.
Well, exactly. I worked in liquor retail, and that's what we always talked about. Was it changes what people buy?
Yes.
But they still buy. And I don't know if you heard about it, but when they first shut down, the mayor of Denver tried to close the liquor stores as non-essential.
Wait, I think I did hear that.
So we had a 2-hour prohibition. That was pretty funny, because as soon as he said that, even here, that isn't Denver, there was like 50 people in line at the liquor stores worried that they weren't going to be able to buy their booze.
Yeah.
So he quickly backpedaled on that and went, okay, they're essential. And
it's like, I don't know if you know this, but like, the reason it's recession-proof is like, alcohol's there for you in the good times and the bad. It's there regardless. Like, what are you celebrating? Maybe you need some alcohol.
That's right.
Are you sad?
Drown your sorrows or celebrate. It's both.
Drown to a reasonable amount.
That's right.
Just take a little dip.
Exactly.
But yeah, so truly, as we were discussing, clearly, Jason, you are living the dream.
Sure.
Yeah, this is
Sometimes
exactly
more
what
than
you
most,
pictured.
but yeah.
So it was funny. I was coming in here, and I was like driving through it, and I wasn't driving, because I gotta drink beers.
Right.
So I had somebody driving for me, and I'm like, I think I know exactly when this brewery was built, because like I'm like, oh, there's automotive shops around here, because we have breweries in my area that are like in this kind of area. I'm like, it's 2014, 2015. And I'm like, let's Google it.
Yep.
And I'm like, yep, nailed it. I'm so good at this.
It's funny when I was looking at sites, and honestly, one of the breweries I looked at when I was thinking about this and planning, and a lot of it was when I lived in Chicago before here, but was Avery.
Okay, yeah.
For a lot of reasons. I like what they do. Obviously, they've had success. I like their lineup, and I go back to their original spot before the Taj Mahal they have now. That was in an industrial strip mall, much like this. And I remember touring it, going, it doesn't matter. People are still here. They're still producing. In fact, I remember that they grew in a way that, in order to package their beer, they had to pump it over 2 other businesses.
What?
So that's kind of, I was willing to trade visibility from the road, so to speak, for space and a little less rent.
Yep.
And that's what we did, and it worked. I mean, people did find us, and plus, we're right next to Highlands Ranch, Colorado, which, not being from here, has both inside and outside the nickname The Bubble. It's a pre-planned community, and I say that I live in Highlands Ranch. You don't go into Highlands Ranch if you're not from Highlands Ranch, because it's very suburban, very cookie cutter. So we wanted to be near it, but not in it.
Okay.
And
so people would still come, and then they would also come.
Exactly.
Got
and
it.
It's a little bit like the wrong side of the tracks kind of feel,
Okay.
because everything in Highlands Ranch is chain and clean and nice and spread out, and that's not us. We're more of a, like you said, we have an auto shop next door and a manufacturing at the other end of the building, and people thought I was a little crazy opening here, and I'm like, it'll work, know. And
time is proven.
That's right. So, now we start plotting our path for the future, which is kind of what I'm working on this year. And, are we staying here? I do not want to lose my customer base, so we got to figure out how we can grow and make all that happen. And it's amazing running a company like this, how much day to day gets less and less about beer.
Yeah.
And more about finance and HR and taxes and government regulation and COVID programs and ordering and, all that stuff. And which I don't mind. I actually kind of like all of that. But I think part of what makes it kind of like living the dream is I can always step back into the beer side.
Right.
And
when you need a break, you're just like, hey, man, I just got to step away for a minute.
Yeah.
And you walk 20 feet and you're like, boom.
I can go hang out with the brewer, and when we started, I brewed every batch, and now I don't brew. I see that as a good thing because that means we're moving forward, and it's not the best use of my time. And so that, it's all good. It just, again, it's just all about rolling with it, and
like you can have a plan until you get punched in the face.
That's right. Mike Tyson, famous quote.
Yeah. So, like, I have I've been doing this podcast for a while, and there's like people like, oh yeah, I'm ready to like own and brew, and I'm going to do it. And then like before they even open, like, I can't do both.
Right.
It's like almost impossible.
No.
I have a friend who just got back. He like kept brewing. His reputation kept getting better, and he ended up being like, a head of brewery operations. And he's like, this isn't what I wanted to do.
Right.
He's like, so he took a step back and got a job somewhere else just to go back to like washing kegs again.
Yeah.
He's like, this is what I liked.
It's
brewing and washing kegs. That's
I
like
used to run restaurant
it.
kitchens, and I remember when I would have to go wash dishes for some reason, it was kind of nice because same reason. I could step away from wasn't really pressure driven. No one would come talk to you when you're washing dishes. So, you got some time to just kind of like...
And it's monotonous. So you're not having to think.
Yeah, so your mind kind of clears a little bit. And, it's kind of the same thing. And even also, you can get so wrapped up in the business and all that stuff that you have to just step out, which, we're not quite open yet. So we're not exactly busy right now. But... we'll have a good crowd in here today, and sometimes you just have to step out and go, these people are here because they like what we do. Yeah. And just kind of celebrate
or they've heard
that.
about it.
Yeah.
And somebody's talking about you.
Exactly. And they're getting that second round because they like it. And that is such a neat, fulfilling moment that is easy to lose. And you don't want to lose it, and I think it's critical just to your sanity, to balance the, if you get a 1-star Yelp review because, the water wasn't cold enough or whatever it may be.
The line was long.
Yeah. Or you look
place is too popular.
Right. Yeah. You need more parking. I'm like,
during a shutdown where we had to use the parking lot as seating.
Exactly.
We can only seat 25%, 50%. Yeah, that's clearly the reason you should be mad at us.
Exactly, or how dare we made you wear a mask?
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. Yelps are ridiculous right now.
It's
they were always something you should just ignore anyway, but like especially now, it's like, come on. I love reading a 1-star and just like, how many sentences until I know that these guys are the assholes?
Right, exactly.
Is it going to be one sentence or 3 sentences? It's no further. You're like, that guy.
And you do learn in business, a business that deals with the public, that no matter what you do, you're going to piss somebody off.
Yeah.
Once in a while. It
Nobody's
just
perfect.
happens. someone on the staff is misunderstood or has a bad day or whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, those are trainable moments, but shit happens,
and oftentimes you're just the breaking point. They've had a bad day, and this was the last straw thing.
And it's amazing because before I ran liquor retail, I ran a lot of restaurants, and I spent, wouldn't say certainly not all my time, but a good chunk of my responsibility would be dealing with complaint phone calls and complaint letters and emails. Those don't happen anymore because they can just go on Yelp and Google and all these places and be anonymous. And, you don't really it's pretty hard to defend yourself without coming across as
defensive.
Yeah. So, you don't want to, and the last thing I firmly believe, the last thing you want to do is try to engage them because that's what they're looking for. And it just, don't stoop to the level and just stay above it. And
unless it's a valid complaint that you can hey, I want to put out to the world that I'm correcting this issue, which is that's what I see. Most businesses that really know how they're doing with Yelp will only respond to ones that have valid criticism. Like, hey, we understand that. We're getting this change.
Exactly.
That way that people can see there's a complaint and be like, hey, that place saw that and made the change. So,
well, and you can always, like you said, you can tell pretty fast, but you can always see there's kind of a discernible pattern of, well, this one thing that probably wasn't the brewery or whoever's fault, they didn't like. So all of a sudden everything else, well, then the beer tastes off and it's flat or it's cold, too warm, whatever. And it's like being able to just kind of sweep all that part away and go, okay, there was the issue.
Yeah.
Is that valid or not? And, you still got to look at them. You still got to learn from it. You still got to correct. But, if you have an overall good score, those outliers are just that, and if something bad did happen, then you fix it. And I firmly believe, and certainly with our group, that they want to do a good job, I mean, they like working here. They're proud of being a part of it. And most of the time, if they screwed up, they know it.
Yeah.
They're aware. So going to beat them up about it, all that does is usually human nature make you defensive. So, let's talk about it. Let's see what we could have done differently and grow. And that's it. Yeah.
Now, if I could give you my Untapped review, I'm currently drinking your Powder Run cream ale. I'll just say I don't like cream. So, no, it's delicious. It's a bronze medal winner.
Right.
And it's with vanilla. It's phenomenal.
Thank you.
It's very bold to have that be one of your flagships, a cream ale. The other one I know of is Mother Earth in Fresno.
California.
In California. I think they're from
No, it's
San Diego, somewhere.
I know who you mean.
Yeah. So Mother Earth, same thing.
Yep.
A cream ale with vanilla, killer.
Yeah.
Killer stuff. This head to head, I don't think I could choose a favorite.
Good.
But they're so good.
Thank you.
And a lot of people, I'm sure you know this, you've probably been told this, people can't sell cream ales because the name cream ale indicates like a weird texture, which does not exist in the beer, obviously.
Right.
But a lot of people will brew a cream ale, just call it a blonde.
Right.
And it'll sell like hotcakes.
So we kind of went reverse on it. We started with a cream ale recipe, but knew we wanted to give it a little creaminess because of the vanilla. Mm-hmm. So we added corn to give it a little sweetness that we wanted. And then we did add a little bit of lactose to it just to round it because we felt like the vanilla needed it. And we didn't pick it as a flagship. It just kind of became one.
Oh, nice.
It was we started brewing, I think, in 2017. And pretty much from the get-go, as soon as we started to dial it in, it just took off. I wanted something that if you're a beer guy, which I am and you are, and you can enjoy.
Yeah.
I mean, is it something you're going to wait in line for the release? No, it never meant to be.
Right.
But if you're not a beer person or don't even really like beer, it's got an appeal, and that's kind of what we were going for. Felt like it took us a little bit to kind of get it where we wanted, and then sourcing the right ingredients. The right vanilla was critical.
Yeah.
Finding and just getting vanilla was hard at that time. We're really picky. I established kind of a rule here. That's the only flavor extract we will use is vanilla, and it's a pure extract.
Okay.
We've tried it with beans, and in our volumes, it's not consistent, and I think it'd be cheaper to have somebody killed than get vanilla in that volume. So we work with a company out of Missouri that we're buying their vanilla locally under another brand, and figured out who it was and just went direct to them because I can't buy the little bottles anymore.
Yeah.
But no, in all our other beers, we only use real fruit. We only use real spices. It's just, I came from a food background, and that's just kind of, to me, it needs to be real.
Yeah.
You know, it needs to be real. And then we 99% of our recipes start as a classic style. And then we'll adapt. Some things we do, we stick classic, and that's important to me because I think that's getting a little bit lost right now in the market.
Like, for instance, we have this Pilsner here.
Yep.
I imagine you're not doing anything too crazy with the Pilsner.
No, that is, in fact, it's one German malt, one German yeast, and one German hop. That's it. You know, just a simple recipe, but 7 years of learning, adapting technique and learning, and just learning and learning and learning. You know, for me personally, when I was writing recipes early on, coming from a food background, it was, we got to build flavor. We need to add this for this and this for this. And when, you know, I hit upside the head and realized, let's try less. Let's simplify. Beers got better, you know, because our technique got better. And some of it's just batch after batch you learn. And I'm a big believer that if you think you know it all, quit.
Yeah.
You know, because you're wrong, and you're not going to get any better, and you're going to get worse. And I believe since we opened, I did a count of not the immediate area, but within probably 10 miles. Since we opened, there are 17 more breweries or tap houses in our area.
And what is your area? What are you calling that? What's your radius?
I used, which you being from California, this will not mean a lot, but it's 285 to the north, which is kind of a main east-west. So not that far north, past Castle Rock to the south.
Okay.
Just kind of the southern metro area, I guess is a good way to put it.
That makes sense. Okay.
We reach a little farther than that with our distribution, but that was, to me, it was a discernible area I could do, and also how big of an area are we really going to pull for the tap room? Mm-hmm. You know, obviously it gets sparser the farther out you go,
right.
but
there's still those day trippers.
That's right.
So,
well, and even, you know, and we're being South Denver. South Denver doesn't quite have as many breweries or as many hyped breweries. I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way. Like north of downtown and north tends to have a little more.
Yeah.
So we've tried to establish down here a little bit. There's no way I can say that it's underserved market. It's pretty hard in Colorado to find an area that's underserved, unless you go out in the Eastern Plains maybe. But so we've kind of flown under the radar a little bit, and that's okay with me. You know, that's not why I got into this. And as we grow, it's kind of fun to just kind of be like, oh, those guys, you know. And getting the monkey off our back, so to speak, and winning a medal at GABF this year certainly helps and feels great. And, you know, it's great for the guys. Tim, who was our head brewer, who was running the show when we won, he just moved back to Florida actually yesterday for family. And then Rob, who just joined us about a week ago, is coming in to take over. So he's got some big shoes to fill, but we're pretty excited to have him on board.
Yeah, in a pretty short time to learn what's going on.
Yeah. It was kind of a quick transition, but you know, it is what it is with what you got. And we were pretty amazed at the candidates we had available, you know, interested in interviewing them. And I likened it to skiing out here. You know, if you decide to go to Breckenridge or Winter Park or Keystone, it's a little bit like you can drive the Mercedes, you can drive the BMW or the Cadillac. You know, they're all world class, they're amazing. And I kind of felt the same way. We got some amazing guys that wanted to come out here and do it, and we felt like Rob was the best fit, and so far so good. So he's bringing a lot of knowledge and some things that are ahead of where we were, which is what I wanted. And
exactly. You don't want to get somebody who's where you're at. You always want to be moving forward.
Exactly. So, and honestly, like Tim had been with us since day one. He'd been home brewer for a couple years. None of us had commercial experience.
Okay.
This was all learned. I homebrewed. When I realized this is kind of the direction I wanted to go, my homebrewing changed. You know, homebrewing is typically and should be fun and hey, let's try this. Let's throw a little of this in. Let's get crazy with this. I started just hammering on styles and learning and just trying to refine.
So you just scale up.
Yeah.
We're like, I know I'm going commercial. I got to make sure I've got these things locked in. Because once you can't come into Colorado and make a subpar beer.
It's done, but yeah,
it's tough.
it's hard. You're not going to grow. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of breweries that I like. I won't say a lot. There's some areas, small guys that survive on their neighborhoods. It's kind of like, it's the local dive bar kind of thing. Like I said, it's so in the culture here that it's a cross between a dive bar and my wife is from the UK. It's kind of our version of the pub.
Yeah.
Where people meet and they hang out and having a bad day, let's go there kind of thing. And
there's a place.
Yep. There was a brewery, I can't remember where it was, but I heard it in a presentation. They wanted to be known as the third place because you've got work and you've got home. They want to be that third place you go. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. That's, of course, didn't take it because they did, but
yeah,
it fit, it kind of fit what you want. And so that's kind of what we've tried to do. And so far so good. So,
yeah.
So what else are you trying?
Oh boy. So I had the dark sour with
kind of different, isn't it?
Yeah. What berry was in there again? I forget.
Raspberry.
Raspberry.
Yep.
Which, my experience, raspberry really takes over a beer. This one does not take over.
No,
it's otherwise be like, this is raspberry because obviously.
So that grew out of a really neat event here. Every year our Brewers Guild puts on a collaboration fest.
Oh, cool.
And it's about 175 beers and they're all collaborations. And typically you do one in-state collaboration, local, and one out-of-state.
Okay.
So what a great event to attend because you get 100 and some beers that are
never going to be seen
unique,
again.
never seen before, and I won't say never again because this was one.
Yeah, that's true.
This was a beer we worked with a good friend of ours up in Winter Park, Colorado, called Hideaway Park Brewing. Andy up there, and with our tie and our theme to the mountains, when we can, tried to reach out to some of those smaller guys up there and work with them. And Tim and Andy came up with this concept of this dark sour. We wanted it to be, frankly, a bit of a mindfuck that it smells roasty, but when you taste it, it's that tart sour, and then the raspberry kind of just rounds it out.
Yep.
We haven't really had to adjust it since the first time we made it. They really nailed it, and it's not a beer for everyone, being a sour, but the other thing is we've had good luck just trying different techniques. We actually sour that with yogurt.
Okay.
Which is not a new thing. People are doing it. It's tricky. You get a little too much and it'll taste like someone puked in your glass. So you don't want that. But we like the complexity of the flavors we got. And it's become kind of in one of our rotational sours quite a bit. So, but what a neat event. We've
yeah.
And it's one of those events. There's a few events that are, Collab Fest is one. There's the Brewers Rendezvous in Salida, and they're as much for us as they are the public because it's a chance for all of us, to go and catch up, and maybe brewers from the Western Slope or, just far enough away that you don't see every other week. Well, don't see near as many people this year, but because that's what's so neat about the industry is there's so many great people, and it's the Sam Calgione thing that it's 99% asshole free,
Yeah.
So you don't ever want to try to be that 1%. Yeah. But so no, it's the sours. We fiddled once with barrel-aged sours and learned that we weren't ready to fiddle with barrel-aged sours. And
there's a lot of different microorganisms in the beer and the barrel, kind of mingling. Sometimes they don't play nice.
No, and we don't. While we have some space, I don't have as good a climate control as I would want, and I just don't. We didn't have enough time to really focus on it the way we should have. So we kind of just put them away, and they went from nothing to really good for a window of about 5 months to, that'll burn the hair off your chest kind of thing, And so, learning experience, and we'll go at it again. We're a lot smarter than we were. I mean, we brewed it in 2015, so we were a year old.
Oh, that's early for a barrel program.
Yeah, it was a little bit ambitious on my part for sure, but is what it is,
Yeah.
So make sure you try the first tall can there. That's one of our New Englands.
Oh, the Arapahae?
Yeah, and I'll give full credit to Tim Nolan, who was our head brewer. I was much more traditionalist when New England started hitting. Fought it for a while.
Everybody did.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to make these beers.
And he wanted to do it, and I said, fine, then you learn how, and you really learn how. And he never stopped learning, and it really got to where I'm impressed with what he ended up with. Like everybody, when we first started brewing them, wow, we just dry hop it differently or use some flake, and there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
And, learning and talking to other breweries and, picking the brain of breweries who, hey, I really like what they're doing. We have some great hazy producers, Cerebral here and Outer Range up in Frisco. And, those guys just make some killer stuff and really have worked on the art of it, and understand what they're doing instead of just put 5 pounds per barrel of hops in. It'll be great.
Let it sit there.
Right. And
It'll come out. It won't come out. That's the thing.
yeah, it will. Exactly. And so we've played with that a lot. We do a range of them. But it's, we don't have them on all the time, but more often than not, we'll have something going or in tank or whatever. But from a production standpoint too, especially putting it in the can, they don't have the shelf life. So you really got to be careful smaller runs, more often, less beer more often for that. And that's again, part of that learning, lagers, you get a lot more leeway with time and, the more hops you add, the less time you have. And,
but you got to wait longer too.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
The whole thing.
It's nuts. I mean, it's hard to stare at a tank week after week, a lager going, I could be 3 things IPA through that.
At least 3.
How much powder run could I have run through that tank right now?
And then I hope the public wants to buy a lager today.
Yeah. Which they always have. How many years did you hear, the next big thing's traditional lagers?
Yep.
Guess what? It's not.
It never
will be, I don't think. But, and I say that, and I love traditional lagers. What it tells me is there's always a place.
Yeah.
There will always be a market and a demand for that quality. And, you go up to, if you get a chance, go to Bierstadt here.
I'm going there next.
Their Pils is absolute world class, in my opinion.
But so there's a brewery in Sacramento, Urban Roots Brewing. Peter Hoey, the head brewer there. They had Bierstadt on tap. They made them have the whole thing, the glassware, everything. So I was like, I've had it, but I'm going to go get it from the store. It's for sure.
And it's a cool place too. It's a really neat facility.
Yeah, so I'm talking to Ashley this afternoon.
Oh, very cool. She's great.
Yeah.
And you get to look around. Their setup is, they are hyper focused on lagers and doing them the right way.
You go to college of a lager house. It makes sense.
Yeah. They've got the horizontal lagering tanks in the walls, and their brew house is, I believe, from the 30s from Germany.
Oh, man.
It's really cool. My hat's off to them for what they're doing, because
I think
that's hard.
We only had one in Sacramento. We had one place trying to do lagers, and they started finding some success. They won for their Dortmunder lager as the best beer in California for the California Commercial Brewers thing, and the California State Fair. And, they started, they made a hazy that was pretty well resulted, but then it started expanding. They've opened up 3 different locations, and now they're gone, and it's it sucks.
I get asked that a fair amount. You can open up more locations.
It's double the price,
and
how much more production
price and overhead.
And
my drive has always been to be a production brewery with a tap room, and I know there was a push to where tap rooms make you more money, open more tap rooms, and
throw in one.
I really
barrel.
believe the guys that are doing that successfully are not the ones. I think the guys who are trying to grow that way, it's harder. It's the ones that already have the established brand.
Yes.
And then that can carry them, the Odells and New Belgiums and those guys. They're opening up a lot of places, and that's working because they're already known.
Mm-hmm.
We've been here 6.5 years telling a story, and every brewery does. It's, whether you're trying to or not, but you open up another place, you got to be far enough away to not cannibalize.
Yeah.
So you're starting over, and that's hard because you're used to a level of, success, so to speak. And I don't know. I just wanted to make more beer, and that was kind of my goal. Is I want to, again, Avery was one I looked at. Founders was another. And this is before they had all their political issues. They were just producing really good beer. And
Yeah, what a bummer.
Oh, I know.
That all day. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I turned on to an all day IPA, and then I'm like, by the way, don't. You should stop. Just there's other session IPAs in the world that
pretty good, though.
don't readily admit to being
if it makes you
racist and
feel any
saying, like, what's the
better-
big deal?
A lot of they're brewing all day at Avery
Oh man.
because they're owned by San Miguel both now.
Oh, okay.
And I know they've transferred some of that here, but which you're seeing more and more of. Canarchy. We've got Oscar Blues here. Suddenly we can get High Life from Cigar City in Longmont, and it's fresh. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
But I think it's great.
I mean, there's a lot of people that will talk about it as like this negative thing, but at the end of the day, you're in the business to make money. Nobody's in the business to be like, I'm just here to make myself happy.
Right.
It's a great thing that happens along the way. But
and nobody's complaining that Sierra Nevada is making beer in the Carolinas or
right.
Oscar Blues or Lagunitas or
People are complaining about Lagunitas.
Well, that's a different reason.
Right.
Although I will say when I was running a liquor store in Chicago, Lagunitas bent over backwards to get us beer. They would
They wanted to be there.
They really everywhere. I mean,
they
that's just
wanted
kind
to
of
be there. As soon as they realized that there was a market for themselves, they wanted to be everywhere. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's
if you have the way to do it and the drive and the ability to do so, I'm not going to fault you for it.
No, I went to both. I've been to both the Petaluma Brewery and the Chicago Brewery. Wow,
yeah,
they're just unreal.
Yeah,
in different ways, but amazing.
I've done the Petaluma one 2 or 3 times. I've done the Chicago once, and the last time I was there, the guy that was like running the tap room upstairs, pre-game in. He was so good at like telling the story, and he was like funny and charming.
Right.
He like roasted a guy that like spoke out of turn, and then like keeps talking, and like 20 minutes later makes a callback to it. I'm like, I do stand-up, so I'm like, this guy, we can't let this guy know that stand-up comedy exists. Yeah. He will take over the world. He's so good. I'm like, how do you make a callback to an improv thing you did? That's insane.
That's great.
But yeah, it's a really cool experience. And like,
it is.
You can't fault somebody who knows what they are.
No,
and with like Canarchy and things like that, or if you're looking at like Firestone Walker and
right
out in New York, that Hennepin guys, what are they called?
Oh,
you know them. We love them. Who they join with? Duvel.
Oh, Duvel Morgat.
Yeah, and like people are like, oh, I can't believe they sold out. I'm like, do you think that's that's selling out? They're just getting a distribution channel.
Right.
People can get upset and leave over it all they want to, but at the end of the day, it's not like you're joining AB and Bev. It's not like you're joining Miller Coors or whatever they're called now.
Well, and we've got Breckenridge right up the road here, which got bought out. Part of me sees that as just, I think Anheuser-Busch went through phases of craft is insignificant to we must destroy it.
Yeah, it is something to be feared and destroyed.
To now we need to be in it. And that to me just says that it's a maturing of our industry. They've stopped the mass acquisitions and it is what it is. It doesn't, I have more issues with them on the distribution side than I do owning breweries, I guess. But I was in Chicago when they bought Goose Island, and I was here when they bought Breckenridge. And I'll give Anheuser-Busch a little credit.
So it sounds like it's your fault.
Yeah, could be. They don't screw up the brewery.
Right.
I mean, their name on it does certain things, but, it's not like they turn everything into Bud Light,
Right.
And kudos to them for that. But again, that to me just says that they realize craft is something real. Mm-hmm. I never believe people are going to go back to the macros 100%. People don't go away from quality.
Yeah.
Once they've had it, my wife's in the wine side, in the wine industry. And, 40 years ago, it was big, cheap jug wines. And in wine, it was not craft, it was boutique, was the term. And the industry was forever changed, and it stabilized. Yeah. And I think craft is going to do the same thing. And I always feel funny saying this after having done it. It's a little easier to open a brewery than a winery, a little cheaper.
Yeah.
Because you can go a smaller scale, but in some ways maybe it was a little too accessible. And, somebody who homebrewed 3 batches and someone said it's good, Well, let's go open a brewery. Well,
Yeah.
there's in any business, there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
It's like being I make great sandwiches. Let's go open a nice restaurant. It doesn't quite
There's a
translate,
difference,
and you're going to see thinning, and that's just part of it, and it sucks, and I feel bad for everybody who struggles, and we've certainly had our share of ups and downs, and but what I do see in the industry that is just so cool is there's always, us included, somebody willing to hold out a hand, to offer help, to offer advice, answer questions. I've learned something from every brewer I've ever met, and and hopefully have been able to pass that on to when I can, and that's what's so neat about it. And like I said, with Collab Fest, everybody works together.
Yeah. And I imagine you said there were 17 new breweries in the area since you opened. I assume a lot of those guys came over to you and were talking to you about like what they should know.
Yep. And it's, you always help.
Yeah.
Because people helped us, I'm a pretty obsessive planner, and I had a lot planned for this place when we opened, and there was still a million things that came out of left field that
you wouldn't know about until comes
until
up.
you're there, and from government regulations to building codes to you name it.
Yeah, I always tell the story. It's like I never had dreams of opening a brewery. I was like, when I was young, I was like, I'm going to be a musician, and like maybe I just like music. I'm not really cut out for like actually writing songs. I'm not good at it, but I do enjoy it. And like for beer, I'm like, I enjoy beer, but it turns out I'm not much of a brewer. But I talk to brewers all the time, even before I did the podcast. And this brewer was telling me about how like they had their entrance shut down. And I'm like, let me go look. And I'm like, oh, yeah, because you have a sewer grate right there. You can't do that. Like, I could have told you that. Like, anybody could have told you that was going to be a problem. If that was like...
When we were first designing this place, it was going to be totally reversed. The tap room is going to be in the back because we look out over Chatfield Reservoir, and then there's a view of the mountains. And I wanted to take advantage of that. Yeah. Long story short, we were 10 feet too short to get the bathrooms to the fire exit.
Oh, man.
So had to scrap it. Blessing in disguise. Would it have worked? Yes. Could we have grown? No. So it ended up being the right move. But again, thought I had it all figured out.
Yeah.
Nope.
Somebody goes in. Nope. This math doesn't work.
And just so many. And every brewery's got stories of what they went through to open.
It's everything's approved, and then somebody comes back in and there's a double check. Like, actually, that's wrong.
Right.
That'll be another 3 months. Thank you.
Yeah. This wall needs to be 8 feet tall, not 4. Why? Because I said so.
Yeah.
Shit.
It was fine last time. Yeah. Then we had a chance to think about it. And we checked the books. I can't know every regulation all the time. That would be an insane requirement.
No. And again, we've had so many people help us that the architect we brought on board just went above and beyond. Bill Wood is his name. And
we have a Bill Wood. He's a brewer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He's Bill's in the beer scene a lot, and he's a great guy. And it was interesting because he would go head to head with the plans examiner, both of them with their code books open, and it was an interesting thing to watch. And I'm glad he was there to do it, and not me, because I wasn't going to sift through all that stuff. But he got us what we needed and got us open, and and still talk to him regularly. It's great. He's done a number of breweries, so. There's so many things, and it's also weird because, like, for this space, this was not a factory space. Mm-hmm. So we had to learn about zoning and learn about fire codes and fire capacities. And, one of the things we don't have here is sprinklers, which adds a whole nother wrinkle. Yeah. I learned about stuff, and this past year and a half, it's been crash courses on accounting and upgrading our accounting and making sure that's right. And that's why it's not really the most exciting things, but you don't get bored because there's always something new that you got to work on and figure out, and as I try to get us in a spot to keep growing, you learn that there's things, okay, if we're going to grow, we got to do this. We got to get our books, not that they were bad, or anything, but you learn how to do it the different ways and the right way and different methods of accounting and what banks want to see and what potential investors want to see, whatever it is, learning that stuff and learning how to fix your glycol loop when it cracks. And, and we did a lot of that stuff ourselves, which was great.
That's how you
Yeah.
You eventually learn that you have to learn that because people aren't going to be out for like 3 to 5 days. You're like, well, I can't wait 3 to 5 days for somebody to come out here and fix this.
No, we just upgraded our brew house in December, just to a bigger one, and the mash screen is bent. And I called a company that built it, and they're like, well, if you can take it offline for 2 weeks. I'm like, fuck no. That ain't happening,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's only the first step.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
It's like, no, that's not. We'll make it work till we can figure it out. And so there's, we found a company here that's working on it for us. But just funny things. They're like, are you kidding? I can't shut down brewing for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It'd be nice, but no.
Yeah. Like, I don't think I have the capacity right now to support 2 weeks being out. I'm not going to turn a customer away. That's not ideal.
So,
oh yes.
What else did you try?
So I've got to talk about this barrel-aged barley wine.
Cool.
Which just came out.
Yep.
I'm a big barley wine guy.
Nice.
A lot of people don't like them. They're a tough thing, but for me, this one is hitting that toffee caramel right away.
Yep.
Love it. There's a little bit of like a vanilla and almond going on. I love it.
Thank you. It
was
was
great.
A couple of neat things about that beer. One, it's both of our barrel-aged beers that we've got in cans right now are predominantly brewed with Colorado malt from Root Shoot Malting here, who is the great people. They have a farm up in Loveland area and craft malt. So wanted to use them as much as we could, and still not a super complex recipe, just trying to get everything we can out of the grain, and then it sat in fresh dumped bourbon barrels. Not supposed to say which ones, but it was pretty premium bourbon that I know. That was about a year in there. And
nice.
So then we just refilled those barrels, so that'll be pretty cool. It won't be quite as much, but trying to get a rotation going. But yeah, I really like how the barley wine came out. You nailed it. It's got that kind of toffee butterscotch, which is what I love in barley wines.
Yeah, truly.
We did blend a little bit of fresh barley wine with it.
Okay, cool.
To cut the heat a little bit.
That makes sense.
Pretty spicy.
Yeah.
It was fun to make. Long boil, but fun to make, So I'm glad you like it.
So I know we've got a can here at the end of the line.
Yep.
Are you doing any bottling for this particular beer?
Just the cans right now.
Cans. Do you feel like the can will be shelf stable for a few years on that? Okay, cool. Because I like going to a barrel-aged barley wine, like 4 or 5 years later and seeing what it does.
We've run some.
It's so good still.
Stuff from before when we were mobile canning that we held on to, and it held up really well. One of the things we do when we can something like this, we slow the line down, so a little more careful on the fills, a little less making sure the air getting in there, and so the CO2 purges run a little longer. And
because it's meant for aging, you don't want to have anything mess that up that doesn't need to be there.
And it should really age better as long as the liner holds up, because the seal's so much better in a can.
Yeah, which is of course from Ball and Oscar Blues.
That's right.
That's the whole thing.
Yep.
I haven't talked about that this whole trip somehow.
I just watched a documentary on the Foods That Made America on the History Channel, and it was I think it was Heinz that came out with the seamed can. They were the first ones, because it was all soldered before then, and they figured out the whole seaming process, and it was faster and better. It's kind of cool, we use that. You know, both our crowlers and our canning line, and it's like the technology is the same.
Yeah. From
100 years ago, 150 years ago. It's like, it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and yet there was such a pushback that you couldn't do it.
Right.
There was so much, cans, and now you got these 16-ounce cans. The 12-ounce cans gone. Nobody has those anymore. Well, and the Bomber, used to be the hot item. You pay $20 for a big-ass beer that'll stay, and they're you don't even see them.
It's funny. We did some bottling before we got the line, and it was by hand, so that's why we went with the canning line. We went with the cans because we could do it better. Mm-hmm. We used to have Bombers, and then the bottom just fell out of that market.
Yeah,
and we switched some barrel-aged stuff to 500 milliliter bottles.
Yes,
so less beer, but the bottle was more expensive. Mm-hmm. So it actually cost me more, but sold better.
Yeah. It's a weirder shape. It's a little bit sturdier.
Yeah.
And then, usually you got to cork it. So you get a little...
Yeah, we were just crowning, but...
Okay.
And that's the problem with bottles. As much as light is, the crown just is not as good a seal.
Yeah.
You know, you want it to be, but corks are going to be better, but that takes a little more effort and equipment and, you know.
Yeah.
But, no, I'm really glad you like the barley wine stuff. It's kind of an area that we're continuing to spread our wings on a little bit. So I
really do recommend a barrel-aged barley wine at Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah, I can see that for sure.
It goes so well.
It's actually a really good wine. Really good beer with a steak.
Yes.
Because there's so much complexity and richness that works with the meat really well. So, and I came from a wine background too, so hence the slip there. But people talk about wine and food pairings, but wine and beer has such a great possibility as well.
Sorry, food and beer.
Yeah, sorry, wine and beer.
You're just on this wine kick. On a wine kick right now. Wine and beer together.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, well,
it happens.
There's guys that have done it, and I've had some pretty cool stuff, but we've got some stuff in wine barrels.
Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah, food and beer, you know, cheese goes better with beer than it does wine, and we've done some cheese pairings, and it's pretty cool. The guy I did it with was really into both, and I was pretty into both, and, you know, so we went well beyond just, here's your cheddar, and here's, you know, we really got into some...
Because the cheeses are nutty. You can throw in a brown ale, you can throw in a porter, and it's going to be way better than any wine. There's no nutty wines.
Right. Or, you know, in something with a sour with acidity, you put it, you know, you can either put it with something that matches the acidity, like a goat cheese, or you can put it with something really rich to cut through it, like a really ripe triple cream brie or whatever, and then adding condiments to it. You can just play with so many flavors, and we're just scratching the surface, I think, of what we can do as brewers. But I would like to see us, I don't want to see us lose the styles and you know, and just quality beer.
Yeah. And I don't think that's going to go away, because every craft beer nerd, you know, they get into it and they get really hyped on like the hyped up beers, the big beers, the crazy beers, and then eventually like, I just want a lager. And that's why it's always people like, this is the year of the lager. It's like, until there's not anybody new drinking beer, that's not going to happen.
And we're just not the brewery that's going to be putting, you know, Twinkies and donuts and Lucky Charms into a beer. It's just not who we are. It's fine and people like it and it's interesting. It's just not what drives me. And Rob, who took over our brewing, is the same way. And plus, I just don't like putting anything artificial in.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Because you can tell.
Yeah, I firmly believe that. And it's just not what I want to be known for. You know, it's not, you know, we want to be known for the quality. And we are trying to be more in the lines where we want to have a mass appeal. Not mass appeal, but we want to highlight. I think there's a great segment of the market of people who just want really good beer, you know, who are maybe not into who's got the biggest stout and the, you know, the most pounds per barrel and they're hazy. They just like good beer, and that's me most of the time. I like exploring and trying, but if I'm having beer, I just want something I really enjoy and can have more than one of, and that's kind of what we shoot for. And we still play in the extremes. I mean, like that raspberry sour is not normal, you know. It's a little off-centered, to use the Dogfish term, but that's fun.
Speaking of terminology, on your cans, you have a quote.
Yes.
Live a life you have imagined.
Right. It's a piece of the Henry David Thoreau quote, go forth in the direction of your dreams and live the life you've imagined. And it just fit who we are. It's funny because the name arose from it was my tongue-in-cheek answer in a previous career of How's Life, but
live the dream.
As a brand, we really want it to be more inspirational. You know, go after something and get it, and don't be afraid to live that life. And I feel like Colorado is such that way with the outdoors and the mountains, and you know, people move here for that reason. They don't.
There's a very specific dream that people have when they're moving to Colorado.
Yep. And we wanted to kind of add to that more than anything else. And that's also why we use the photos on the cans.
Boom.
Because it captures why people want to live here. And what I like about it from a marketing business perspective is it's also why people travel here. So if hopefully we get to the point where we're sending beer to other markets, it reminds them of either why they want to come here or time they've been here, and that has an appeal to it. It's a product that's designed to make you feel good, and that's what we want. We want the brand to to really kind of envelop that whole thing and be a part of that, inspirational piece. And if you're standing like the Arapahes can, Mike Acera, who he's our taproom manager, that's his photo. He was standing there witnessing this, that's part of it.
That sunset is beautiful.
Yeah, it's, or the 7-speed with it's a woman on her bike with her dog. It's in silhouette. It's a little harder to tell, but that is just the Colorado lifestyle. Dogs and bikes are massive parts of it. I rode my bike here today, Sarah, who's in the tap room's got her dog with her today,
Hank, already petted him a bunch of times.
Hank's brother comes here too, actually. Jess, who works for us, has Hank's brother.
Is it Frank?
No, it's, oh shoot. I'm going to get in real trouble for not remembering.
Oh boy. It's okay. Yesterday,
big fail.
Just for listeners who, I think it was Friday, I couldn't remember the word hypocrisy. So,
Did you hate when that
I was
happens?
like, when you say one thing but do another one, and like the brewer and the guest were like, we don't remember what this word is either.
Yeah.
So
it's, I'll tell you a hard part about kind of the same thing is, obviously you meet a lot of people doing this, and you talk to a lot of people, and you do your best to remember every one of them, but you don't, and you try. And, people come in and talk to you like they've known you and you're just struggling to, I know you, and I know,
capacity. Yeah. Even like the night before I left for this trip, I swung by a brewery to grab like, a special release that they did.
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm going to be in and out. And there's this guy wearing this shirt. He's like, hey, God, I don't know who this person is. And I'm like talking to him, and I'm looking at like visual cues. I'm like, oh, this is a local coffee roaster. He owns his own coffee company. And I'm like, well, this is crazy because I've just got a message from another coffee roaster like, hey, we should do an episode about coffee beers. And like on the same day I run into another car. I'm like, it feels like now I have to.
Right.
But I was just like, I can't place you. And that makes me feel terrible.
Oh, it's awful. You feel
because he's wearing a mask. And I met the guy one time, like in May, So
Yep. It's somebody I gave a tour to or whatever. And I'm like, oh, God, I feel like shit for not remembering. Just like,
But yeah, like everybody has a capacity, and it's limited.
Yep.
And if you're going to remember that person's name, somebody else is going to be forgotten.
Well, and I'll give you a little bit of a downer that I'm older than you, and it gets worse.
I know. Well, I had the problem when I was young. I listened to so much music. If you wanted me to tell you what song was on, I'm like, I have no idea anymore. I've got 3,000 CDs. You think I know the name of every track at this point? I don't. I have no idea.
Well,
it's track 4. I know it's track 4, and it's good.
Another reason I can tell I'm getting a little older is I'll flip through and listen to like hits station and no clue who any of them are. No clue. But it's a phase thing now. I just don't care.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care.
You listen to what you listen to in high school and college, and it doesn't change.
No, exactly true.
Like, I'm going to reach out to musical people that live in Colorado to do this trip, And so I got Devotchka's violinist and accordion player to go over to Great Divide with me.
Nice.
And here I was like, who lives in Littleton? And it turns out there's this metal band that broke up in 2007. Their guitarist was here. I tried to get him. I tried really hard to get him because even on the way over here, my driver was wearing a shirt or a hat that on it. He was wearing it backwards, and it's like extreme technical death metal. I was like, hey, that's what they played. So I sent him the picture. I'm like, hey, it feels like the world wants you to be here.
So I have to save face. It's Crosby is the dog, and I knew it, and I just couldn't think of it. So
okay,
Hank's brothers Crosby. Sorry, Jess.
Yeah, well, I didn't get hypocrisy till the next day, and late the next day.
You could probably see the steam coming out of my headphones, but of the gears turning too hard.
I mean, and there's no real connection between Hank and Crosby. There's no easy connection. It's not, Turner and Hooch.
No.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
No, there's no.
Yeah.
But they're pretty funny when they get together though, because they're definitely brothers and play that way. But no, and dogs have been a big part of us since we opened. So my dog's getting a little too long in the tooth to come down, but she's a little too old. But we've always had dogs, and we've done adoption events, and it's just another way where it's just pretty cool when you can connect that way. And I mean, there are dogs that I think the staff knows the dog more than the owner. I don't think that. I know that. Or even they're like, do you know such and such? They're the ones with the this dog. Oh yeah. It's just such a neat experience when the community kind of embraces you and such a give on both sides that it's hard to really fully explain. I mean, it's just cool.
I love it. So brewery dogs, they're popular. A lot of breweries have dogs, and they're like the face of the franchise.
Right.
Then there's brewery cats, the backbone of the brewery that just hang out in the brewing area. They don't ever come out, but there's brewery cats as well.
We don't have any of those. I'm super allergic.
You can't have
cats,
both. There's a law against it.
Usually they're there to kill mice, but we actually, because we back up to the wilderness, we get more squirrels, which is always interesting. They tend to chew. They'll chew grain bags pretty good. We had to make some adjustments.
Yep. But you made the adjustments.
Yeah,
that's what's
right.
important.
But other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Yeah, I'm trying to think as well.
Reaching into my head and.
I know I was supposed to ask about you working with Ska on some stuff.
Oh yeah, we did work with Ska Fabricating on part of our canning line. Ska has an offshoot of fabricating. They build equipment, and we worked with them on. It's called a can depalletizer, and basically it's just the machine that takes the big pallet of empty cans and raises it up, pushes them off onto for theirs it's a turntable into a chute, and that's what feeds our canning line.
Okay, so basically it gets them into single file.
Exactly, exactly what it does, and just pushes each level. Works really well, and they just decided to make their own, and people went, well, make me one, and they've kind of become one of the leaders. And again, getting it during the pandemic was interesting and it was a new variant of, funny enough, the design was actually, they bought the design, as I understand it, from the mobile canners we've been using, Craft Can. Mm-hmm. They had built a prototype that they use. I assume, I don't know this firsthand, that Ska liked it and bought the design and then adapted and modified it
to their needs,
to their improved a couple things, and it was new enough we didn't even have a manual yet for it. So that was a bit of a guesswork and a couple of YouTube videos, but no, they've been good to work with, and their local rep here, she's great. Ska's just one of those. Again, I didn't know them as well when I was planning this place, but they'd have been another one I'd have looked at. They're doing things the right way and always have, and so hard not to respect and like, and what they do. And if you get down to Durango, visiting the brewery is really cool. The tap room's awesome. And
I've done a Zoom one with them over quarantine.
Okay.
And I met up with one of their sales reps at a punk show.
Oh, nice.
And fortunately in Sacramento, there's a guy writing a book about ska. Yeah. So hey, do you want to come and talk to these guys? And we'll just
that's cool.
Have fun. There's music blaring in the background,
Yeah. No, I remember running the liquor stores in Chicago, selling a lot of when Modus Hop Around came out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was trailblazing to us. It was kind of that
first
can and just really hop forward, and it was one of the first that we just went, this is one you need to try, and really sold a lot of people on it. And it's so neat to have that kind of full circle where you go from having the beer, selling the beer, to working with them and meeting them and knowing some of those guys, and and that's where one of the beers I won't say got me into craft beer, but I just remember was when I was running stores in Chicago, Hopping Frog out of Ohio came in. Okay. Big beers. And I tried their Boris the Crusher and their Mean Manalishi double IPA. Took a couple bottles, got a couple bottles from work and went home and tried them, and they were both good enough. I drank both bombers, and that was a mistake.
Yep.
In one night. Yep. And a few years later, when the Craft Brewers Conference was in Philadelphia, we're hanging out at a Belgian bar and having beers with Fred, who was the guy who started and owned Hoppin' Frog.
That's awesome.
That's just cool, It's just an honor to be a part of that group, and hopefully to be able to inspire somebody else the same way. That's kind of that end goal of, you're doing something right if that's the case, and that circles back to why you always help when you can.
Yeah. You can get one person to be excited about,
absolutely.
I can't believe that I'm doing this. That's
it's cool. Some days it is inspiring and fun like that. Some days it's not. It's like any job.
I want nobody to know who I am.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's like or you're just not in the mood to be that marketing and guy, and and talk to people and be upbeat when you're either really pissed off or just disgusted with something. But you got to put the game face on, and you got to do it. It's
be
part
professional.
of it.
That's part of the
part
of the thing. So before we get out of here, I know you do a lot of work with a lot of charities. That's one of, I know a lot of breweries do, but of course you've got your whole thing. We were discussing the can art, but it is pictures of the wilderness.
Yep.
Put on the can, really supporting the preservation of Colorado
Very
and
much.
why people appreciate it. So can you tell me about some of the people that you work with?
Sure. Well, that one is probably our biggest one.
Wilderness Wheat.
Yep, Backcountry Wilderness Wheat. We have worked with the Backcountry Wilderness Foundation here for about 5 years. And Lindsay McKissick is their outreach director who we work with. We've done the third Thursday of every month, we do our pint night for them. We're $1 from every pint, beers for bucks for them. They've helped out with different things. We also sponsor the local running race series here and pour beers at it and their mountain bike series. But with Backcountry, they do a really great job of keeping alive the outdoors, especially in kids, and that, we're in such a time of everybody's on their phones and screen time. And, when I was a kid, I left the house at like 8 a.m, got home maybe by dinner.
Yeah.
It's such a different time, and they do a great job of programs, and not only of teaching kids in camps, but also trail preservation and wildlife and all that kind of stuff. So it was great to start working with them. So we got this idea to do this with wheat beer, and we wanted to design the beer that was, if you just got done hiking or you just were in the outdoors, it's a perfect beer. It's a light wheat with American wheat with some coriander, and we use some fresh orange zest in it and a little bit of grains of paradise, and so really that light, crisp, kind of refreshing beer. And we came up with the idea of, well, we're going to can it, let's get them involved. So we said, hey, give us some photo ideas that we can use from you guys, and then we will promote it, and we give a portion of the proceeds of every case we produce goes to them. And that's been fairly recent. We just are deciding that we're going to go with that beer in the warmer 6 months of the year, basically March through September. And we just brewed a test batch. Jamie, one of our brewers, has been working on a midnight wheat beer.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to work with that, I think, try to develop that for the winter season, and we'll go to a different, more of a night photo. But we
love that.
Yeah, and it's just been great to work with, and they've been a lot of fun. We pour at some of their events, and they came and they did a fundraiser at one of our anniversary parties where Lindsay did some tie-dyeing for us, and for donations, and we've raised a lot of money for them, and that's pretty cool. And the race series the same way, where that post running race beer that I am not a runner, my wife is, but it's amazing. You got to give hats off to runners, because it could be 9 a.m. and there's they want
freezing
their beer.
cold. Yeah.
Yep. Which, they've earned it. They've run the race, and so that's been a lot of fun to work with those guys. And like I said, we worked with a number of dog adoptions, and anything we can do that fits our brand and the quality of people that we want to be associated with, and we're always looking to try to create a win-win. It is amazing when you open a business like this, the onslaught of donation requests you get is staggering. And it's hard, because at some point you do have to learn to say, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm just tapped out, because you do want to get, and some of them are great, and some of them you can tell are kind of naive to it all. And we'll put your beer in front of like 50 people. Well, you want like $300 worth of free stuff.
Yeah.
So $6 a person doesn't.
They can just come here.
Yeah.
I'll get that $6.
I'll give you, no.
Yeah.
It's just, and you want to help, but you can do some things and some things you can't, and that's just life. But yeah, so that's that can, and so far that's our only fundraising can, so to speak. But who knows? I don't want to dilute what we're working with them, but you never know what's going to come down. We have a couple ideas, and a big thing to me is too, for donations and fundraising and that kind of stuff, I'm going to give first dibs to what's important to our team. Mm-hmm. If it's something they're involved with, we had a former employee who's had ALS in her family, and My father passed away from basically type 1 diabetes, and Dave, my director of operations, his son has type 1. So that's those are the things that are going to come first and foremost. But there's so many great causes out there too. So you just try to do what you can, and even we're sponsoring the local high school's touchdown club for the football team, mostly because the members want to come here and drink. But so be it. My son goes to that school, so that again falls into that near and dear. So there's so many ways you can do it, but it's one of those things that you got to. I won't say you got to be careful with, but
you've got
more effort than you think.
Yeah, because you get at least 2 requests a day, probably.
Yeah, when it used to be, everyone was like, "Well, let's just have a beer fest."
Yeah.
Then they realized that's not as easy as it sounds, especially here. You can't just host a beer fest. You got to have a nonprofit, and they got to run it. There's a lot of legalities with it. So those have tapered off, and obviously with COVID, they've really tapered off. But I am looking. It's been crazy. 2 things: that it's been over a year since we've done a beer fest, and it's been over a year since we've had somebody sitting in our bar having a beer because we've had to go to a different system. Yeah, that's just staggering. That's just hard to grasp. If you'd asked any of us that 2 years ago, no way, that we're going to go through a year of this.
There's no way to anticipate that at all.
No.
All right, let's get out of here. Before we do, Jason Bell, where can people find out more about Living the Dream online? Follow you, figure out what events are going on, what beers are releasing?
Sure. We are, our website's livingthedreambrewing.com. You can find us on Facebook. Just search Living the Dream Brewing. Twitter, Live Dream Brew, I believe.
Nice.
And
I like that.
Instagram as well. If you're ever in Littleton, South Littleton, come see us. So we're open every day.
And for Barley Me, you can find Barley Me across social media at Barley Me Pod. Check out my basketball and beer podcast, Please Dunk Responsibly, wherever you get your podcasts. Right? I love it. It's so good. We compare players to beers, teams to breweries, eras to, I forget.
Is it more NBA, college, or both?
It's more NBA.
Okay.
It's me and a local chef who's also a big basketball fan. So it's me and Phil Webster, who, because he's a chef, I can never get him on the actual podcast. So during quarantine, I was like, hey, man, we keep talking about basketball. Do you just want to do a basketball podcast?
That's awesome.
And so it was like a thing to fill at the time, and now it's its own thing. So
Kinks seem to be kind of for real this year. So
I know. It's very weird because we started off pretty hard on them. And I always will be because they do make terrible choices. But I'm a Raiders fan, so I'm used to that too. That's truly the worst handling of a team.
Funny.
But I was just over at Horse and Dragon, and I was like, I did this outro, and we ended up talking about how happy Nuggets fans are to have Mike Malone.
Yeah,
because the Kings fired him for no good reason. And I was like, yeah, let me tell you about. And it's like, never mind, we got to go. But
so I'm a bit of a closet Kings fan because of your rookie.
Oh, Tyrese.
I went to Iowa State. So
that's how I became a Raiders fan.
Nice.
They drafted Napoleon Kaufman. I was a UW guy.
Okay,
so I was like, yeah. I mean, as a kid, I was living in Seattle. It wasn't like I went to UW, but I was like, oh. And my gym teacher had been like a practice squad cornerback.
Nice.
With the Raiders. So I'm like, oh, I've got 2 connections. I'm a Raiders fan. The Seahawks were terrible, so it was an easy jump.
Well, and I tell you, watching him in college, not only it's amazing what he's doing in the NBA right now for a rookie, but you will not find a nicer guy. He is such a good kid, and
I'm sure we'll squander it just like we always do. Some people, you can put them anywhere and they're going to succeed. And I think Tyrese Halliburton's that guy.
He is. And he's one of those guys that will make everyone around him better.
Yeah. And you can't teach that.
No.
So that's the nice part. You can't beat him out of it either.
I knew he was going pro, and it just still hurt because, then we completely fell apart as a college team. Yeah. But, just such a class act up and down. I mean, he was always that way. And you could see when even in college, when guys would interview him, you could tell they just loved talking to him. He was just, and that's how he is. It's really his personality. So I never see him on TV because we don't get the Kings
him all the
games.
Time.
But
it's great, super fun.
But it is what it is, and that's cool. I never would have paid attention to the Kings till that. So
I mean, there was no reason.
Right.
Yeah, and then of course you can also find me Bengineering, the advice podcast. It's Crazier in My Business with comedians Becky Lynn and Tavi. Check that out wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm working on another project because I don't know how to stop.
You just like talking.
No, these last 2, no talking.
Really?
Yeah, they're just. I'm like, well, I have ideas. We'll work around it. So Becky Lynn's my girlfriend, so that makes it easy. Like we have our quarantine pod. Tavi comes over every Sunday. We record the episode, and on Wednesday it's out. But
that's great.
It's just maximize it because they have such a good report. Anyway, we gotta go.
Yeah, it is Easter, I guess.
Yeah, Jason Bell with Living the Dream Brewing. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
and to our listeners, thanks for listening. Stay home safe.